We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in the film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. And I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Off air, Shane, we were talking about age, and I've just clocked that as I turn the big 30 on Tuesday next week, this will be the last show I ever do in my 20s on the air. Well, I guess if you count the post-game, technically it won't be, but the last On the Shane page with me, does that count as a young man? I never know how old our listeners are. So I don't know if I would count that as a young man, but I feel like 30s is, you can't really call yourself as young as I once was. So there you go. Last show in the 20s. Long may this continue into our 30s, though.
Long may it continue, indeed. I don't know how I feel about you insinuating in your 30s you can no longer be called young anymore, but I guess my semi-frequent visits to a chiropractor to make my back work the way it's intended probably proves your point. So,
yeah, I may have thrown that out there deliberately, as I know your age as well. So it might have been a little shot at you as well there, Shane, as always. But yeah, except for that, this was a weird game because post-game I felt like I had to bring some energy because I expected people to be down and a lot of the comments were negative. And I think everyone, like the general Eagles consensus, is actually rewatching the game. It's like, yeah, it's quite good. And it shows you why All-22 is important because I think when we're fans and we are analysts, but we're also fans. When you're watching the game, you are looking at it for a different perspective because you're trying to analyze the game. And especially when I know I'm doing the post-game show, I'm trying to look for a couple of scheme tidbits to mention. But I'm also praying that they win big time. So it sort of goes both ways. And I think the nerves may have annoyed me a little bit watching on Sunday. I think the blocked field goal maybe just put everyone in a bad mood going in at halftime. And it wasn't just us. You could tell the tension was in the crowd as well. There was lots of boos. There was Sirianni literally fighting fans, of course. So, I mean, I think it was a good one to rewatch because I think it's a good game for maybe film guys to have a few different opinions than what a lot of people thought watching live.
Yeah, this is one that, we spoke off air before we hit record here that I think we both felt a lot better after watching the film in this one. So we're going to dive into it and we'll follow our usual format and give you 3 takeaways on offense and defense each. We'll throw some film on the screen. If you're a listener only on the podcast feed and you don't get the opportunity to watch live, you can go to Johnny's Twitter. He will call out play numbers on the show, and I've got a film thread up, and so you can see exactly what we're talking about as you listen along, or maybe you're one of those people that just visualizes really well and you just close your eyes while you're listening, unless you're driving, of course, and you can track it all. So however you want to watch, we certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. We do also want to briefly plug the Patreon before we dive in. You can join our Patreon community at patreon.com/ontheshane-page. And you get access to a lot of perks, an ad-free version of this podcast feed. You get to vote in our player spotlight polls, and we're going to profile Cooper DeJean later because that's what our patrons voted for this week. You get access to our monthly mailbags. In our $5 a month tier, you get access to my All-22 film review, which I've finished recording. I've got to edit after this show, and that'll be up for the patrons as well. So a lot of perks. I'm biased, but I think it's well worth the $3 to $5 a month. If you don't want to do that, we certainly appreciate you just listening and downloading as well. So, Jonny, let's dive in on the offensive side of the ball. How about I lead us off? Because my first point is actually about the opening drive. And so let me share my screen that I thought I already shared.
Makes sense, doesn't it? When your first point is the first drive to begin with this. Yeah, before we begin on the first drive, Shane, some of the stats going around about how bad the Eagles are in the first drive is absolutely wild. So I'm glad you brought this up as one of your points, because every time I see another stat about the Eagles in the first quarter on opening drives and second drives, it sort of blows my mind. So I'm interested to see if we agree on this, because obviously for those listening, we don't talk about this before. So get into it and tell me what you saw on the Eagles. Are you just doing the first drive?
Just the first drive, and really just 2 plays. So the first drive, the first play, I'm going to get to on a point later. It was an under center toss that picked up 5 yards. And then on 2nd and 5, the Eagles come out. Well, 2nd and 5 and 3rd and 5, they're going to come out and they're going to run back-to-back vertical routes. Now, I don't know. The first one I'm fine with. You've got A.J. Brown. The Browns are going to give you a lot of single high coverage, as they tend to do, which means that whether it's man or zone, functionally your outside receiver is one-on-one with the cornerback. You like A.J. Brown one-on-one with cornerbacks. And so on 2nd and 5, they're going to take a shot. And I don't really mind the shot. It's really good coverage by the defensive back. And I mean, this could maybe be a catch. This could be a catch if it's a perfect throw right on the outside shoulder. It's just like a smidge too far. This is a really difficult throw to make. I don't mind taking the shot on 2nd down. What I really mind is when you come back and you take a shot, then on 3rd down, because now it's 3rd and 5 and you just don't need the yardage that they come out and try to get. This is clearly like a cover 0 look. They've got nobody in the middle of the field. You've got 3 over 3 at the top of the screen, and Devontae Smith is one-on-one at the bottom of the screen with Denzel Ward. And they're going to throw this up to Denzel Ward, and they're going to throw it up to Devontae Smith, covered by Denzel Ward. I just don't like this. Like, this is a low percentage play. You're attacking their best man cover corner with your second best receiver on a vertical ball. And I mean, why not in this situation just go get the first down? Like, just run an out route to somebody at the top of the screen. Run a slant route to A.J. Brown. Like, there's so many things you could do here, I feel like, just to get 5 yards, and the Eagles come out and they just throw this up. And a flag gets thrown, it gets picked up. We could argue whether that's pass interference or not, but it doesn't get called. And the Eagles end up off the field after the opening drive. And it's just a frustrating way to start games, especially when you have been so slow starting. I pulled out some of those stats. The Eagles on opening drives this year have run 16 plays for 12 yards. Jalen Hurts is 4 of 9 with 28 yards and an interception. His average depth of target is 14.4 yards. That's tremendous. The longest, the highest ADOT of any starting quarterback this year is 10.2. So this is tremendously pushing the ball downfield. In this game, Hurts started 0 of 5 passing. Now, one of those was a throwaway after a botched snap. On the other 4 throws, he had an average depth of target of 21.5 yards. After that, he goes 16 of 20 with an average depth of target of 7.8 yards. Like, in my opinion, the biggest issue with the Eagles' starts, their slow starts, is this obsession with generating explosive plays to start the game. That's why they've gone 3 and out on 4 of their 5 opening drives. Like, the obsession with generating an explosive play is actually just generating 3 and outs.
Yeah, I think there was a really interesting quote, and I wish I had it in front of me, but I don't, from Sirianni, when he was talking about like when he calls plays. And I think he sort of like admitted, and if I read it correctly on the 3rd and 1, that like he almost called like, let's be aggressive on this play. And we've spoke about the organization sort of like philosophy of the Eagles being too aggressive since we basically started this show, and I don't think it's ever changed. There's a good comment coming in saying, are we trying to set things up for later in the game? I sort of think like Kellen Moore does that, and I know this is very trendy now because everyone talks about Kyle Shanahan doing it. I don't think you are when you throw those deep shots. Like, unless you're trying to, you could argue maybe you're trying to get a team to then play more too high, and then you can run the ball, but that's not what Jim Schwartz does. You're not setting anything up in terms of running vertical routes on Jim Schwartz's defense because he lives in single high. Like, you know you're going to get that coverage the rest of the game. I find it really weird as well. I feel like Hurts is a pretty rhythmic quarterback. Like, there are some quarterbacks who can just turn it on, and I don't think Hurts is one of them. I think Hurts has to get into a rhythm. And like you, I don't hate the 2nd down throw, although like he's never completed a pass that game. It's literally his first throw of the game, and you're asking him to take an absolute shot down the field. And the 3rd down one is really bad. Like, it's bad in every way. It's a low percentage play on 3rd down. There's absolutely no disguise. You're running a play at their best cornerback with your second best receiver, who's not really excelling in that. The Eagles had like a 4-strong route opposite it, and they could have easily just put A.J. Brown as the isolated X receiver and not Devontae Smith. Like, I don't really get what they were doing on that 3rd down. I guess I want to tie this into my point as well, Shane, because I'm going to talk about...
I gotta fact check myself real quick on the fly.
Yep.
I gave the correct down and distances and I gave the correct stats. Those were actually the second and third downs on the second drive. I pulled the wrong clips to talk about, but the point still stands that they came out attacking vertically on the first drive, and they did the same thing on the second drive. They picked up a first down, and then they got to a 2nd and 6, and they were targeting vertically again. So anybody that's watching super close, I realized I was talking about it. I was like, why are they so close to midfield? That was actually the second drive, but the statistics and the same idea still applies. So there you go. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, before I get to my point as well, there was a good comment from Ryan saying that like every game the Eagles do like one thing and then next drive it seems to change. It's quite a long comment, so I won't read the whole thing out, Ryan, if you don't appreciate it. But he's basically talking about like maybe we don't really stick to something when it seems to work. And I've had this feeling for ages, and I sort of nearly tweeted this on Sunday, but then didn't. But it feels like the Eagles maybe have too many people involved in play calling. Like, I'm guessing that Sirianni still has a say. I'm guessing that Stoutland has a say in the running game. And obviously, Kellen Moore has his stuff. And sometimes it feels like they run something that works and then they don't come back to it. Mesh is a great example. They literally killed the Saints running mesh week 3 and then just abandoned it from the playbook week 4. Like, except for Crash, there's not many staple concepts that I see every single week from this offense. I want to talk about the aggressiveness as well and sort of the two sides of it. Like, I think sometimes I think it's basically a lot of casual fans that I see online seem to think aggressiveness is just throwing a deep ball to AJ Brown. And it's literally like a 50-50 ball. I don't really buy that. Like, I like aggressive play calling. I've always liked aggressive play calling. I think AJ Brown is so good. And my first point was going to be about AJ Brown as well, sort of combining the two. That the Eagles' aggressiveness works solely because of AJ Brown. I think Jalen Hurts deserves credit because he throws a really, really catchable deep ball. And not every quarterback throws a deep ball as well as Jalen Hurts. I think it sort of goes under the radar, the velocity he puts on those deep balls. But AJ Brown is an absolute star. So if you look at the first touchdown that the Eagles get this week, which is play 6 of my film, Fred Shane, for anyone listening, if you haven't got one up, it's not just like a AJ Brown stand outside and throw it down the field to him. Like, this is not like I mean, I've seen some like next gen stats saying it's like a 25% chance or something. And I find this a little bit weird. Like, if other teams were running slot fades, we'd be really complimentary of it. So the Eagles come out with AJ Brown isolated to the left. They then motion Dallas Goedert, which I'm going to talk about later on about how they use motion. AJ Brown actually should not win this play because the cornerback does a really good job. He's got outside leverage, and AJ Brown still burns him to the outside. But if you watch Jalen Hurts, he is reading the middle safety. The middle safety isn't even looking AJ Brown's way. Like, he's playing middle safety, but he's playing Jim Schwartz middle safety, which is aggressive. He's not getting deep. He's really trying to pick any crosses over the middle. This is not, to me, like silly aggressiveness. I know some people say it's a low percentage throw, but if this is a low percentage throw, then sort of everything down the field is a low percentage throw. He's open. They've got the matchup they wanted. They've got AJ Brown on a slot corner where we can go both ways. He's really, really easily beat him. Like, this to me is fine. And you know what? If it's not there, you can always come back to something else. I mean, I don't actually like the concept they pair it with particularly here because there's nothing short. But I don't think it's like a disaster play. The one play that, and I wanted your opinion on this play because this has gone a little bit sort of viral this week, is the 3rd and 1. I think it's gone viral because, number one, Nick Sirianni came out and said he called it, so everyone went mental. Then Fran Duffy posted a video, and Fran mentioned that Jalen Hurts audible to it, and now I cannot tweet without everyone replying to me telling me that Jalen Hurts audible to this play, therefore it's his play. So I believe it is play 8 of my film thread as well. And I've just realized, Shane, I've combined 2 of my points because this was going to be my second point, but I'll do it in one. My second point was going to be how 2023 some of the Eagles offense looked. And I've still got something else I want to say about that, but I'll come back to it. I will just add, like, this is Kellen Moore's offense with a sprinkling of Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. I think some of the comments, like, it's not Kellen Moore's at all, are wrong. It's not what Kellen Moore's traditionally looked like, but there's a lot of Kellen Moore elements. This is like, I've been thinking about this play a lot today because every tweet I got back to this, and I literally got about 14 replies as I'm looking at my Twitter timeline now, and all of them were, well, Jalen Hurts audible to this. It's all Jalen Hurts' fault. And the fact is, when we don't know, number one, because we don't know what players are told. Like, I don't know what Jalen Hurts is told here. For a start, and I said this, for a quarterback to even audible to a play, he has to have the option to do it. Like, the coaches have obviously worked on this play. It's in the playbook. It's an option against 3rd and 1. Maybe, Shane, Jalen Hurts goes out with a run option and a pass option. He looks at the defense and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men on the line of scrimmage. And obviously he goes, yeah, we ain't running. So I'm checking to the pass play. I don't know how many options he has available. Maybe it is a Jalen Hurts problem. Maybe Jalen Hurts is the one that goes, I want 4 verticals to be the play call. Because if you run the play very quickly, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. Saquon Barkley misses a block. The Eagles run 4 verts with the tight end running it over. Devontae Smith does come wide open. And I've seen a lot of people saying, well, it worked, you see. I disagree strongly that this play worked. I disagree with a few reasons. Number one, I think whenever you're sending in all that blitz, quarterbacks are told not to cover the deep stuff. It's almost like if they get past me from 10, 15 yards depth, then the defensive line and the pass rush has failed. That's not my job. And that quarterback is staring at Devontae Smith until he basically runs. The second thing is when you blitz, you're always going to get a man free. That's like the point. You outnumber the offensive line. That means you're always going to have one-on-one matchups. You could basically play like any all that blitz and say, but if only they picked up the block, it would have worked. Well, that's sort of the point of blitzing. Yes, Saquon Barkley misses it, but that's because they send like 7 rushers. So I hate this play call. Like, I'm all for aggressiveness, but this to me screamed 2023. And I do buy that this had Sirianni in. There was maybe something to do with like planning of this play because Jalen Hurts can't just audible to 4 verts randomly. If you watch him, he doesn't actually audible properly. He looks like he checks at the next play. So it's really hard. I've seen so much criticism of Hurts on this play, and I find it a bit annoying because I don't know what his options were. In my opinion, it could have been, well, you got to run, you got to pass, check to what play you want. It could have been when you come out, you got 2 options of pass plays, check to the one you like based on the down and distance. But when you have a 7-man front and you've got motion available, you've got some of the plays that the Eagles run, like the one where the tight end leaks out the backfield, some of the plays we saw in this game where they ran bootleg from pistol. There are things you can do to pick up a yard on 2. And I just fundamentally disagree with this idea of throwing 4 verts on 3rd and 1 with 2 timeouts left, even if it works. So although I'm like saying I'm sort of talking both sides here because I'm saying I quite like some of the shots to AJ Brown, I think the thing I'm trying to get at is there is a time and a place for everything. And I think 3rd and 1 with like 30 seconds left and 2 timeouts is not the time and the place. And there are times in a game when you can take shots. And I think you summed that up well in your first one. The 2nd and 5 shot is not the end of the world, but the 3rd and 5 shot to Devontae Smith is a problem. I think it's too binary to be like deep shots bad or deep shots good. Like you can have a bit of balance here and say there's a time and a place. Maybe it's a situation, maybe it's matchup specific. Time on the clock left, what you've seen on film earlier on. There's loads of things that go into this. I also would just say it is too simplistic to say it's purely Nick Sirianni running 4 verts. Like Kellen Moore runs a lot of deep shots. I watched him run a lot of deep shots with Dallas. And also we know the Eagles have AJ Brown for a reason. AJ Brown is incredibly good at running in a straight line down the field. So I don't care who the Eagles offensive coordinator is. They are going to be throwing deep shots as long as Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are the QB and the wide receiver, no matter who the offensive coordinator and the head coaches.
Yeah, I want to respond to all that and also this question from Mark on Twitter because I think it all ties together. But he asks, could defenses be taking advantage of Hurts' audible trends? Here's the thing. When you have, it's the same thing on the play that ices the game later, the throw to A.J. Brown. When Jalen Hurts throws a hand signal to a receiver and you run a vertical route to A.J. Brown, and after the game they say Hurts checked into that play. And the same thing here. That doesn't mean that Hurts got to the line of scrimmage and said, we're running whatever I want to now. It means that in the huddle, 2 plays were called. And I very much believe, like that last play of the game, Hurts checked into that. Yeah, because he was told pre-snap, like, this is a play we're going to run unless we get this look, and then we're going to check into this to A.J. Brown. And so he saw the look he was told to look for. He throws the hand signal. You check into that second play. That doesn't, to me, Hurts could incorrectly read one of those and check when he shouldn't. Where I'm interested in like, Hurts changed the play is like in the Saints game when he walks up to the line of scrimmage and clearly calls a different play that was not called in the huddle, and it ends up being the mesh play that works. That's Hurts taking over at the line, and that's different than what is happening on this 3rd and 1. It's different than what's happening at the end of the game. So when people use the terminology of he audibled or he checked, we got to be clear what we're talking about. Did he completely change a play, or did he just go to the second play of the 2 that were called? And so I think that's an important distinction to make.
And Shane, I think you can go one step further as well. Like I can't remember, but the final play, I don't even know if it was a change necessarily. I think Jalen said he ran an alert call. Now, if you ever watch a QB school, he talks about alert all the time. That's essentially where you run the concept, which I think on that final play, the Eagles were in 12 personnel, and obviously the Browns were expecting run, and then they ran like a little hitch and an in, and that was where they were going to go. They also had a check down to the running back that was wide open, by the way. So if Jalen Hurts wanted to run that play, he could have. And people could have said, well, why doesn't he do it? Well, basically, an alert call is if you get a coverage of the matchup you like, you basically can just take the deep shot. Like, there are so many things that go into this. The idea that, like, Jalen Hurts is at fault for, like, changing the play on 3rd and 1. So the Browns, basically, you could say, want the Eagles to do this. Jim Schwartz is saying there is no one there. So when the Eagles call plays like this, and every NFL offense has this, most NFL offenses are going to have a guy running down the field on nearly every play to stretch a defense. If the QB likes the call, he might call that his alert, and it's almost not in the progression. So an alert is often not in the progression. You'll go, I imagine this play is meant to be read 1 to 2 to 3 from the comeback, the in to the check down on the right-hand side. But it's almost like he's got an alert where if he sees the safety is not there and he likes the matchup, he can just ignore his progression and throw it deep. There's so many complexities to this that just the comments, and they did annoy me a little bit. I'm old enough to not be annoyed by comments on Twitter. Not the people that were commenting to me, by the way. They were right. But they were pointing out that Fran had said, Jalen Hurts audible to this, Jalen Hurts audible to this. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't really mean it. We don't know what the situation was. As you said, there are so many complexities. Jalen Hurts also changed the play to mesh earlier on that you mentioned that went for a huge touchdown. So all of a sudden he's a genius. Well, no, it's probably that when he came out, Kellen Moore said, you've got 2 options. If they look like they're running this, then call that play. And the way the Eagles are organizationally set up, and this is Sirianni and Kellen Moore, who deserves blame, they have part of their offense where on 3rd and 1, they want to run 4 verticals. That is not Jalen Hurts just going to the line of scrimmage and going, screw everything my coaches are telling me. Let's just whack out 4 verts. That's not how these things work. He has an option that is built into the offense to do that. And my criticism is I don't like the fact that that is something they would look at on 3rd and 1 because of the situation they were in. And this is where it's different. If there were 4 minutes left on the clock, Shane, go for 4 verts. But the other issue is maybe roll... Let me finish.
Okay.
My answer would be because if it's incomplete, then you can just QB sneak it anyway. So 3rd and 1 could actually be a great chance to take a shot. But what I was going to say was, what you might do is run 3rd and 1, but run it with a bootleg or run it with Jalen Hurts getting outside the pocket so he can throw it away if he needs to. Or you do it from a really deep drop with maybe like max protect so that you at least have a chance for Jalen Hurts to get out the pocket, because then you can just throw it away. And on 4th and 1, you can live to fight another day. Or you can literally just launch it up to AJ Brown really early. And if he doesn't catch it, he doesn't catch it. And you sneak it on 4th and 1 anyway. The problem was the situation. The problem was once that play happened, they basically had to kick the field goal. And the worst thing you could do was take a sack, because then you get pushed even further back. So the situation was wrong. I think it's too binary to talk about like Hurts audibling good or bad. I think some of the comments I think I've seen have gone a bit too far. So, yeah, that's a really long point we spent on like 1 or 2 plays, but I think it is quite important. And I know you got the play up on the screen now. Is there anything before we move on? And I've been thinking about this play a lot today because it's so 2023 to me. And that's what annoyed me about it was like, we've got a chance to have a big play rather than let's pick up the first down. And I don't even want to get into the time management on this drive, by the way, because I think they butchered that as well. And if they didn't butcher that, I don't think they would have had to be as aggressive here. But that is a whole other conversation for another day. So is there anything else you wanted to say, Shane, before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to talk about the time management portion. It's 3rd and 1, 30 seconds, 2 timeouts, tush push, call a timeout, and you got a first down with 28 seconds left. So that's what you should do. If you want to throw, like, I don't have a problem with just throwing. I got into a conversation with a Madden pro that's a big Eagles fan on Twitter. He was asking, what's wrong with the play call? Like, you're getting one-on-one. It's like, well, if you want to throw it, that's fine, but you need 1 yard for the first down. And at the bottom of the screen, you've got AJ Brown with 9 yards of cushion. Like, you can throw a smoke screen to AJ Brown, and if he breaks a tackle, it's a touchdown. You can throw a slant route to AJ Brown, and if he breaks a tackle, it's a touchdown. You can throw an out route to Devontae Smith, and if he breaks a tackle, it's a touchdown. So there's a lot of throws you could make that are a broken tackle away from a touchdown. And what's a higher probability thing? AJ Brown breaking a tackle to score a touchdown, or the Eagles perfectly picking up a cover 0 blitz, Devontae Smith having chance to break a route at 15 yards downfield before the free runner gets to Hurts, because it's a cover 0 blitz. There is a free runner, even if Saquon picks this up, and then Hurts to make that throw under pressure. Like, if I want to go for the explosive play, if I'm thinking touchdown, not first down, I'm still thinking throw the slant, because I think it's a higher percentage thing.
Yeah, the slant to Devontae Smith would have absolutely killed that, by the way. If you left a tight end into block or set the tight end on an out to the other side, and that whole middle of the field is open. As you mentioned, cover zero blitz is meant to have a guy home. I personally think even if Barkley picks it up, I think one of the Eagles' offensive linemen gets pushed right back into Hurts.
Well, it's because he's trying to block two guys. Too.
Yes, he's
got a hand on two different guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that play has annoyed me since Sunday because I keep seeing people, if Saquon picked it up, it's always ifs. There is big ifs in every play. Right, let's move on, Shane, before we spend far too long on that play. This ties in nicely because we actually had a comment earlier on that we haven't got to from, where was it? From Cota's Cave on Twitter talking about the Eagles run game, which is something I'm very passionate about. But today it's your turn to start us off. So talk to me, Shane, about the Eagles under center run game and the use of pistol as well.
Yeah, one last thing I will say. The only reason, like, Saquon should have picked that block up for sure, but the only reason people don't moan about this play call more is because the Eagles offensive line does such a good job. There's literally 5 offensive linemen blocking 6 guys because one of them has a hand on 2 separate guys trying to block him, and it impedes it being a free runner. So it's a fantastic job in protection by everybody but Saquon. But anyways, yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about the Eagles under center running the football, Jonny. We saw this. So let's go to the first drive. On the first drive, we're going to get this under center toss play. And one of the things that's really cool is the Eagles are in 12 personnel, right? But this is a tight end and this is a tight end. So your tight ends are out at the boundary and in the slot. And then you've got A.J. Brown condensed at the line of scrimmage. Why do they do this? They do this because they're going to toss this ball towards the top of the screen. And A.J. Brown is going to crack block Myles Garrett. All he's got to do is get enough into him that he can't, as he's trying to get upfield, he can't get outside on Saquon. And it works. And then because that works, because you blocked their best player with a wide receiver, now you have 2 tight ends in the open field, and you've got Jordan Mailata moving in the open field. And it just works really well. Like, he doesn't get very much of Myles Garrett, but Myles Garrett can't make the play. And all of a sudden you're out on the move and you get 5 or 6 yards on this little toss from under center. And we'll show it from the back view so you can also see. I also love that they run up to the line and quick snap this, but he doesn't have to get much of Myles Garrett. It's just enough. And so
Shane,
they come.
Before you move on to the second play, can you just show Cam Jurgens on this play?
Yes.
Because, oh my goodness, Cam Jurgens is absolutely ridiculous. I put this in my BGN article, but like, if you're wondering why people haven't spoken much about missing like Jason Kelsey, it's because he moves identical at the second level. Like, that was so. I know he didn't sustain the block, he didn't hold it. I know people are going to come in and say he didn't hold it, but when you watch it from the other angle as well, he is shot out of a cannon. He is so explosive. This is the angle I love. Just watch Jurgens after the snap. That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. I just wanted to mention him very quickly there because that is about as quick as you can possibly get to the second level.
Yeah, for sure. I had somebody ask me like what I've thought about Cam Jurgens this year, and honestly, my answer is that you barely notice Jason Kelsey's not playing. And that's not a shot at Jason Kelsey. It's just Cam Jurgens has immediately stepped in and played at an extremely high level. Despite what PFF said, PFF gave him a 19 pass blocking grade this week and charted him with allowing 0 pressures, which makes no sense. But I'm telling you right now, Cam Jurgens is playing. He's a top 5 center in the league right now. And we're going to see the same thing on this second run. It's going to be the same exact thing. We've got A.J. Brown condensed again. You've got a tight end outside of A.J. Brown. And this time they're going to run it to the right side. And so A.J. Brown's going to crack block. You're going to get the left guard. I think it's the left guard. Might have been Lane. I don't remember. One of those guys is going to pull, and you're going to get tight ends out on the move. And you're running the toss to the side. And if Grant Calcaterra is able to sustain his block a little better, this could be an even bigger play. But again, it's I think this was an 8-yard gain out of under center, out of a toss. You can watch from the back view here. If Grant Calcaterra, who's just off screen, can block JOK a little better, unfortunately, one of the pullers has to help clean that up. And Grant Calcaterra is just not a good blocker. So anyways, but my favorite thing is they come to this later in the game. It's the same look. I've showed it to you twice. A.J. Brown condensed to the right side. You've got a tight end inside of him, a tight end to the outside of him. Which way do you think this play? Because the Eagles only go under center to run one play. We're going to run this toss to the right, correct? and they're going to get a guard pulling, except all of a sudden it's not. Hurts opens up like it's a toss right, and then he flips it to Saquon to the left. And now you have Myles Garrett, who is unblocked, fooled on the play. You don't even have to block their best player, and you get Saquon out in space. And so, again, watch from the back view. Saquon's got the little stutter step. Hurts opens up like you're going to pitch it to the right, and then you hit him going the other direction. That's what I love about under center, is that you can do that. You can threaten both sides, and you just can't really do that in the shotgun running game without like the zone reads, which Hurts doesn't execute the best. I don't think that's his best usage. And in this game, the Eagles ran 7 plays, either runs or play action passes from pistol or under center, for 80 yards with an 85% success rate and 0.714 EPA per play. Now, I didn't show the pistol runs or passes in this little point because it's kind of beyond the scope of what I was going to talk about. They're going to be in the All 22 review that I put out later today, and you can check those out. But under center and pistol, who knew, Jonny, that it could be a formula for success?
Yeah, who was calling for more under center and pistol? If anyone from the Eagles read my article or listened to our podcast last week, I've been calling for this for God knows how long. What's scary, Shane, is those numbers you gave from the Eagles running game this week. When you look at under center and shotgun, if you just go on like Eagles NFL scores on Google and look at the actual stats of the Eagles running game, you would think the Eagles ran the ball horrendously. So how bad must the rest of the Eagles carries have been? Because Saquon Barkley went 18 for 47. I'm not smart enough to remember all of the runs they did with Saquon from pistol and under center and add it up on the fly now. But let's average at 5 yards a carry and take off 3. I think you're looking at something like 15 for 32 or something. You're probably looking at less than 2.5 yards per carry. The big thing now for the Eagles, and I'm so optimistic about this in my article, if the Eagles can finally get this shot, is they need to build on it. You cannot just run outside zone toss. You now need to start running some bootleg off it. You now need to start running some play action. This isn't even one of my points, Shane, but I'll throw it in here before we get to our third. The Eagles' play action rate in this game was like 5%. You can't run an NFL offense, as optimistic as I am about some things, and run play action that low. Like, you are literally leaving so many easy plays on the table. What's even more crazy, Shane, is the Eagles run play action at 5% when they run a lot of the ball early down in this game, and they have Saquon Barkley, and they're playing a team that is an aggressive team who sells. How many times did we watch Jim Schultz's defense get burned over the middle of the field with play action and tightened up the seam or a receiver on a crossing route? It's sort of bizarre. And this is why this game is so weird for me, because every time I say I'm positive, there's a stat I see online and I'm like, oh, God, that's awful. And I want to be positive about the offense because the under center pistol stuff is amazing. And it's literally what I've been waiting for. And then I see all that and I'm getting really happy. And then I see a stat the Eagles ran like 2 play action plays in this game. And you think, what the hell is going on? Before we move on, Shane, very quickly to our third point, Zach Berman had a tweet that I'm totally going to steal, but I obviously gave him credit as Z-Berm on Twitter. To be fair, if you're watching us, you probably follow Zach Berman, seeing as he's probably the best Eagles or one of the best Eagles journalists out there. The Eagles had 2 plays of play action, which is the fewest of Kellen Moore's career as an offensive coordinator. There have only been 15 games in his time as an offensive coordinator with 6 or fewer play action passes, and 3 of them have been with the Eagles. Now, before everyone starts getting in my feelings and tweeting, oh, it's Jalen Hurts. It's Jalen Hurts. Go and look at Jalen Hurts' numbers from play action. They are always good. Jalen Hurts, as far as I can remember, I've been looking this stuff up. He does not have bad numbers from play action. This year alone, I think the Eagles are actually, and I'm looking up as we're talking now, but the Eagles are efficient from under center. So I'm as you can probably tell, someone got it earlier on, Johnny's annoyed this week. I'm not annoyed this week. I just find some of the Jalen Hurts discourse really unfair because people seem to just assume that because they don't do it, we can't do it. And like, I just don't know if that's the case because Jalen Hurts did it once in this game, by the way. He threw the play action play perfectly. I just find it too simplistic to say, oh, the Eagles just never run play action because Jalen Hurts hates play action. And then the Eagles run play action and it goes well. And I'm going to talk about motion after and I'll have a similar point. But I just don't buy this idea that like they hate play action all of a sudden. Like the Eagles have run play action with Jalen Hurts before. I remember writing about it a couple of years ago and the play action numbers were pretty strong. But 2 plays of play action and the fact that Kellen Moore's 3 of his games lowest as an OC come this year is pretty wild.
One of them wasn't even play action technically because it was a backwards pass to Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, is it? There's so much good stuff from this week if the Eagles build on it. Right, let me go to my third point really quickly, because I know we always take long, but we really did have a discussion there. We haven't really had the Jalen Hurts discussion in a while, so I think it was maybe a good time to get into it. I want to talk about motion very quickly as well. The Eagles don't run motion very much. They ran it a lot in the first couple of weeks, and they've stopped running it. They run it currently at the 25th highest rate in the league. However, I'll say the same thing. And I'm just going to mention Cota's Cave comments as well. I don't understand either, Cota, why teams wouldn't want to use Hurts mobility and play action bootlegs. No one knows. I don't know either, because they did it once in this game, and it was like the easiest 30 yards I'd ever get, because the entire defense was obsessed with chasing Saquon Barkley because it's Saquon Barkley. So I don't know either. I wish I could tell you. But again, going back to motion, when the Eagles used motion in this game, Shane, it worked. So I'm like, why don't you do more of the stuff that works? And for all the comments about Jalen Hurts, he quite often throws it to the guy who's in motion as well. If you got play 4 up, Shane, on my film thread, I very, very nearly tweeted this play before the game, and I did have it in my BGN article. The Eagles ran this play with CeeDee Lamb about 50 times when I watched Kellen Moore's film. You very simply bring Devontae Smith, in their case, CeeDee Lamb, across the formation. You snap it as he's running, and then he sits down in the flat. It's almost a bit like the Dolphins motion they used last year with Tyreek Hill sort of getting a running start. Number one, this is a great play call against the blitz. The Browns send 5 here. Jalen Hurts has no pressure, picks it up, throws to the guy in motion. I'm struggling, Shane. Jalen Hurts hates motion. What did Jalen Hurts hate about this play, Shane? What has Jalen Hurts ever said in the press conference to make us all think that he hates it? I don't know. It's just something that we just say like a narrative, he doesn't like it. And I'm watching motion in this game, and every time they do it, he ends up throwing to the guy in motion, getting a first down against the blitz. That was a really cool play that I really, really liked. And then the other 2 I really liked, play 9 and play 10, you can show almost back to back. I guess play 9 isn't really, I guess it is motion. They run Jahan Dotson around the back, and it ends up like a backwards pass. And what I like about this play is they notice that the Browns don't follow Dotson. So the Eagles end up 3v2. And by the way, this play call would have made a lot of sense on 3rd and 1 earlier on, Shane. But anyway, we'll move on from that. But that play call would have made a lot of sense. And then once again, Jalen Hurts reads it correctly and throws it straight to the guy who is in motion. This is an actual one that Jalen Hurts reads well on a RPO. And he also reads it quickly, which means there's no offensive lineman downfield, because they definitely could run this play to the left. And they actually pull 2 guards, which are awesome as well. So the Browns linebackers are really distracted. Then if you go to the very next play, Shane, what does Kellen Moore do? He recognizes that, if they run this motion again, I bet the Browns are going to follow Jahan Dotson. So what does he do? He motions Jahan Dotson. This time he's in the pistol. The Browns then follow Dotson, which means they have one less defender on the left. The safety takes a sort of horrible angle, and Kenny Gainwell is sprung free through another great run, Shane, from pistol. And we say it all the time, but the defense has no idea what way Kenny Gainwell could run this play. He could go either side. So yeah, my final point was motion, because the Eagles aren't doing it a lot, and I'm sick of people saying it's because Jalen Hurts hates it. And I'm not even trying to defend Jalen Hurts here. I just don't like people saying things that we don't know are true and taking it as fact, because the Eagles have stopped running motion a lot since week 1. And I'm a little bit confused as to why, because when they do it, it works well. And Jalen Hurts seems to be very efficient when they use it. I just feel like Kellen Moore hopefully is watching this film going, yeah, we need to do more of this stuff, because this stuff is really working.
Yeah, I will pull up here in a minute. I kind of want to see what their motion rate is since week 1. So let me pull that up just real quick. Since week 1, they have run motion on 43% of their snaps, which doesn't seem right. Oh no, since week 2, they've run motion on 37% of their snaps, which is 30th in the NFL. So there you go. Tremendously more. Weeks 1 and 2, it looks like they ran motion at a 56% rate. So they've dropped from 56% to 30%. So there you go. Okay,
Sorry,
I will get in.
Sorry, Shane. I've done the classic pause. I was desperately trying to look up something as well there on motion on 1st down, because I feel like that's gone down as well. And I couldn't get it in time. But they ranked 29th as well in 1st down motion. This is going to blow your mind, Shane, and annoy everyone listening and me as I'm looking this fact up live. The Eagles rank on 1st down since week 2. They rank 29th in play action with only 14 snaps. when they've run it, their success rate is 4th best in the league. If you can figure that out, someone explain to me why when they run when they use play action, they are the 4th most efficient team in the league on early downs. However, they have only done it, as I mentioned, at the 29th ranked in the league. If someone in the chat can explain that to me, I'm all ears, because it doesn't make sense to me.
That's like the one every week I tweet out the schematic tendencies, and the Eagles have run like one snap where they dropped data into coverage and it was a successful play. So they run it at a 1% rate, but they have 100% success rate.
Love it.
Okay, my last point will be really quick. One of my Twitter followers deemed this play follow the leader, and I like it, so I'm going to stick with it. But this is how you use Jalen Hurts in the QB run game. 3 times in this game, out of shotgun, they ran a pin pull concept with Jalen Hurts following Saquon Barkley through the hole. And this is how you want to use Jalen Hurts in the run game. Getting him downhill, not so much the read option. So I'm just going to roll these and you can see them. I'm not going to diagram each one, but 3 different times they ran this. And it's just a great way to counter what the Browns were doing. They're single high, so they're +1 in the box, but they get their defensive ends really wide, and they do that so they can attack upfield. And so when you do that, you're leaving a huge hole for Cam Jurgens to climb through and for Saquon Barkley to run through with Jalen Hurts following. And all 3 of these were successful plays. Every time they ran it, it worked. The last time it doesn't work as well, and it's simply because Saquon and Cam Jurgens both try to block the same guy. But this is this is what I want to see the Eagles doing more often. Not as much of like the QB draw from empty, which is still a good play call in certain situations, but this is a way to manufacture a numbers advantage in the box. Like when you go empty and you're trying to spread the defense out to get a numbers advantage, you can also force the issue into a stacked box like the Eagles did in this game if you just use your running back as a lead blocker as well. So this is the last one where they both target the same guy instead of splitting apart. I'm not sure who's at fault there, but even though that didn't really work, like they didn't execute that well, it still gains yardage. And so all 3 of those were positive plays. That's the way I would like to see him use Hurts in the run game moving forward.
Yeah, I won't talk on this so much because we need to get to the defense badly. But this is something we called for. This was one of my things that I called for on the top 3 things I want to see the Eagles improve. I will just leave it by saying essentially that there is so much good offensive stuff in the film this week. If you were to take the top 30 plays, you could build an offense around it. If you were a scout or you were starting a franchise from new, you go, right, we've got the vertical shots, we've got the running game from the center and pistol, and we've got Jalen Hurts running plus the occasional motion. And the play against the blitz was really good. There's so much good stuff. It's just like, I feel like they need to run the good stuff more. And that sounds very, very simplistic. But there is stuff they need to build on. And I really, really hope that we see them build on this next week and not just run a brand new offense. I will say on Jalen Hurts, I've said this for a while, I don't think Jalen Hurts is good enough to be your franchise quarterback without his legs. And that's not a knock on Hurts because he's an unbelievably good runner. I think you don't just let him scramble. You need to have designed runs in the playbook for him. If you're right about him getting injured, then you shouldn't have paid him to be a franchise quarterback because he needs to run the ball. They should be running QB designed runs frequently, like the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson, because quite simply, he is not ever going to be efficient enough as a passer to be worth the money he makes unless he is running the ball as well. So if he gets injured, I think you say the Eagles then maybe shouldn't have made him the franchise quarterback, but I want to see more QB runs still. QB counter bash, I always call for. QB trap, QB draw, I know people don't like. I agree with you. QB lead is better. But quite simply, Jalen Hurts has to run the football more, or I don't think this offense will ever be at its like peak success rate.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be a lot. I mean, if you call a design QB run 5 times a game, that combined with his scrambling ability is enough for me. I think that's enough to keep the defense honest. But there you go. That's our analysis. The Eagles should do more of what they're good at and do less of what they're bad at on offense.
Boom.
All right. Well, let's move on to the defense then, where the Eagles should also do more of what they're good at and less of what they're bad at. Let's dive into our defensive points. I'll lead us off here. And I'm going to lead us off with our player spotlight. So each week, our Patreon members get to choose a player that they would like for us to spotlight on the podcast. This week, it was Cooper DeJean. And so I just want to show a few plays here from Cooper DeJean. I won't spend a lot of time on any of them, but here he is lined up in the slot on Jerry Jeudy, and this is going to be a slot fade that they run. And I think it's pretty good coverage. I mean, he's basically on an island. This is single high man coverage, and he's able to push him to the boundary and out of bounds. The second play I want you to see, he is tracking motion from Elijah Moore on the outside, and then Elijah Moore is going to run. I'll pause it at the snap. He's going to threaten vertically, kind of like Devontae Smith did, and then break off into a comeback route. And I think Cooper DeJean does a good job of playing this, staying attached to the route. I mean, there's a throwing window there, but DeSean doesn't make that throw, and he does a pretty good job of closing that down. Later, this is a play we spoke about on the post-game show. For those of you that were watching that, and Cooper DeJean is going to blitz out of the slot. And it just seems very obvious that he's going to blitz. I mean, if you just watch him walk in before the snap of the ball, like, it's very clear. Deshaun Watson doesn't see it, and he doesn't end up getting the sack, but he hits Deshaun Watson, and it leads to a sack. However, here's another play where he sort of does the same thing, and he doesn't blitz. Like, he very clearly looks like he's blitzing here, despite the fact, and I love this, that there is absolutely no possibility that he's blitzing on this play. Because if he does, there's two receivers, one defensive player, and there's nobody else that can reasonably get over there. So it should be blatantly obvious he's not blitzing. But he does kind of creep in, and then he gets back out. So that's just something that he does at times, and I like that. It kind of makes it where it's not as believable when you are creeping in. And so I liked that. Back to that one was shown out of order because I just wanted to compare those two. But here he is in the slot at the top of the screen. This is after his blitz for the sack. He's going to have a real quick trigger in the run game here. Just watch how quickly he transitions out of the back pedal and he comes up and makes the tackle, or assists Cooper DeJean in making the tackle. And then, Jonny, you tweeted this one. And it got a lot of traction, but here he is again, blitzing from out wide out of a stack alignment. And he's just going to blow up Jack Conklin, the right tackle, who has 105 pounds on him. And Cooper DeJean just sends him flying. And so Cooper DeJean's a really physical player. He was a lot of fun to watch. I do think, well, actually, I'm going to leave this because I'm going to talk about some man coverage stuff later, but he played 52 defensive snaps in this game out of 57 possible. He had 2 pressures and half of a sack on 3 pass rush reps. He had 3 run stops. He was targeted 4 times and only surrendered 13 yards. So all in all, a really good debut for Cooper DeJean.
Yes, I'm very jealous you got to talk about him. I loved it. I think he moves so well. Shane, you showed every play and you missed the best play. You missed the best play, so I'm going to have to add a film
I did it
to your film, Fred.
Are you talking about the tackle down near the goal line?
Yes,
I didn't miss it because one of my other points is going to be the goal line stand, and it's in there. So I am going to talk about it.
Okay, I will not show that tackle, but he flies around the field. I thought his coverage was better than I expected it to be. I thought his coverage was going to be quite weak, and maybe his run defense would be really good. But we've said it since the days of Sidney Brown in the slot, and Sidney Brown cannot cover like Cooper DeJean. Vic Fangio's defense relies so much around the nickel in run defense, and it's like a cheat code. If you can get a really, really good slot corner who can cover and hit, I've said for a long time, I think Cooper DeJean will probably end up in the slot in a Fangio defense because I think it just suits everything he wants to do. He can run, he can hit, he can blitz. There's no reason why I see that as not being his long-term position personally. Right, I'm going to talk about run fits because run fits is something I've moaned about a lot this year. And my next segment is actually going to be, well, my next 2 are going to be very simple, Shane, like the good stuff and the bad stuff, because that's how I felt watching this game. But I actually wanted to shout out a few players, and we had a nice comment come in from a horrendous account that I'm going to shout out now saying toilet paper. That is his name on YouTube. But he tweeted saying, shout out Nolan Smith. And I do want to give a shout out to Nolan Smith, Shane. Nolan Smith gets a lot of crap because he can't rush the quarterback, and that is all correct. He can't. But it doesn't mean he is useless as a player. And there was a couple of run fits on this game that got me a little bit happy. So I'm going to show you a couple, I guess. Firstly, the Eagles still played more 4-man fronts in this game, and I think we're going to have to accept that Fangio really plays 5-man fronts more. But I noticed a couple of big differences with their run fits, and they weren't perfect, and the Browns had a couple that went horribly wrong for the Eagles, and I'll show them when I talk about Fangio being bad. But there was some good stuff in particular. The first one I wanted to mention was, I don't know if you saw this, but the Eagles' edge defenders were running down a lot of stuff backside. I think I saw Brandon Graham make one. I think Nolan Smith made one. I think somebody else made another tackle backside as well. They were far more aggressive at the stopping the backside run plays. If you go to play 10 on my film, Fred, if you cast your mind back to, was it week 3, the Falcons game, or week 2? God, it feels like years ago. The Falcons ran under center, outside zone against the Eagles 4-2 front repeatedly, and they killed the Eagles. If anyone was watching the film, if you're not, I'll point it out to you. The Eagles are now running a 4-2 front, but this time they're not slanting their defensive tackles in a stupid position. They are not, what was I going to say? They are not having this ginormous gap between the edge and the defensive tackle. In fact, even though I think it is Milton Williams or a Jomo here, Milton Williams gets moved quite a lot on this play. The gap between him and Bryce Huff at edge is not terrible. The Cooper DeJean does a really good job getting down quickly, and Brandon Graham then makes the play backside. And I think just in general, this team were much more disciplined with how they defended the run, especially outside zone. There are a few bad snaps. I will get to them. But I wanted to finish with the Nolan Smith play on the goal line because I just think it's really good. It's clip 14 on my film thread. This was a play down at the goal line later on when Deshaun Watson ends up keeping it. He fakes it to the left and then runs to the right, and the Browns pull to guards. Or no, sorry, they pull to guard and the center. Nolan Smith ends up having to first take on a tight end. Then he ends up getting blocked by the pulling by the pulling guard. He ends up sort of getting his head inside to force Deshaun Watson to go outside him, and then makes a tackle as well. There is not another Eagles edge defender who makes this play, who is athletic enough, no offense to Brandon Graham, who's obviously an unbelievably good run defender, but I don't think he has the athleticism to win on the edge here. Sweat and Huff are not making this play. Shout out Nolan Smith. He gets a lot of hate from the Eagles fans. I see the word bust far too much. He is not a great pass rusher. Would you like a first-round pick to be a good pass rusher? Yes. Was he picked in the top 10? No. Do we see a lot of guys who join in the first or second round who can't rush the quarterback and end up busting? Yeah. Nolan Smith will have a career in the league because when you can play the run that well, when you bring the energy he does, I think it was his best game as a pro. And I wanted to give him a little bit of a shout out because he is somebody that we have been very critical of on the podcast. And we are not people that will ever just stick to our opinions like some do when it comes to QB evaluations, just to make themselves sound smart. I still think what we said about Nolan Smith as a pass rusher is absolutely correct, and he's not shown yet a counter move. But the way he avoids the tight end there and the way he deals with the pulling guard is really good. So I think the Eagles' run defense wasn't perfect, and I'll talk about why later. But for the most part, I saw some pretty promising signs this week.
How bizarre is it that you have a 15th percentile height, 2nd percentile weight edge rusher who is 99th percentile in explosiveness that can't rush the passer but is a really good edge defender? I remember doing my scouting report on him and being like, this just doesn't make sense. It makes absolutely no sense. It's kind of like it was with Devontae Smith, though. I thought Devontae Smith, one of his best skills coming out of the draft was his ability to defeat press coverage at 1st percentile weight. And sometimes players' skills and their traits and their skills don't match up, and it doesn't make any sense, but that's just the way it is. Do you want to go ahead and just do your bad stuff point too? So it just kind of goes back.
Let's do it. Let's do it because I'll end with my good. There isn't loads of bad actually this week, but there was a couple of plays that really annoyed me, and I want your take on one of them actually because one did absolutely kill me. And to be honest, it's the only really bad play that I really wanted to talk about. It's play 5 on my film thread. If someone can explain to me what on earth the Eagles are doing here, I would love to know. So the Eagles have got one of their 4-man fronts again. And as I said, they did normally play a 4-man front in this one. They have got Josh Sweat at edge. And Josh Sweat does this thing that we've highlighted on the podcast 1,000 times, where he slants inside. So if you, sorry, Shannon, is that you got a different angle to play, yeah? So yeah. Josh Sweat slants inside here. Now, when he slants inside, there is nobody. Either Milton Williams is meant to come all the way across, which is basically impossible, or Cooper DeJean has to be responsible for half watching the inside gap. Is it the A gap? Half watching the A gap, unless he's expecting Booker and Milton Williams to completely close it, and he's just meant to go outside immediately. I don't see how they're fitting this run. This was the play I remember live. I mentioned this play on the post-game show because I watched it live and I was furious about it without the all-22. In my opinion, Shane, and tell me if you think I'm wrong here, there are 2 options that the Eagles are doing here. One, Josh Sweat is free roaming and he's doing what he wants because he thinks he's seen a play and he thinks he can make it. Or 2, Fangio is telling him to go inside and the Cooper DeJean is meant to be replacing him. as he goes inside, or Reed Blankenship is meant to. Bad news, I think both options are terrible. If Josh Sweat is free roaming, that's really bad by him, and that's a terrible play by him. If Fangio is asking Blankenship and the Kobe Dean to do this, that is also a terrible play. And I understand trying to be creative and aggressive and making players do different things, but you don't have to do this. Josh Sweat can just set the edge like a normal human being, and you don't have to worry about the guy getting outside, because far too frequently this year, Shane, we have seen teams run outside on the Eagles with a lot and lots of space free. So I'm interested to hear your take on it, whether you see it differently to me or whether you think anything else I've missed. But I don't like, at the moment, the way I see it, I don't like either option, basically.
Yeah, Josh Sweat plays 40 snaps a game. I don't think Vic Fangio is letting this slide for a guy that plays 40 snaps a game, because Josh Sweat does this consistently. Like, this isn't something that he did this one time. Like, I feel like consistently Josh Sweat jumps inside and there's nobody outside. And he does it to the point that, like, his playing time hasn't been cut. So I've got to assume he's being coached to do this. I don't think he's just, maybe once he's deciding to, but it happens consistently enough. I think this is what they're trying to do. And I just don't see, like you said, how do you fit the run here? Like, you're either asking a linebacker that's in the opposite A gap to get all the way outside to the C gap, or you're asking your safety to come down and fill. And I just don't think either of those are particularly realistic. So yeah, that's one that's just like, you just look at the back view, even before the snap, you look at the back view and it's like the running back is offset in the shotgun. And both of the Eagles linebackers are on the same side as the running back. Like, there's a 95% chance that this is a run play, it's going away from both of your linebackers. And so you've essentially got two defenders in three gaps on one side, and you've got four defenders in three gaps on the other side. So pre-snap, like, you show me this freeze frame and I don't have any context for the play, my best guess is they're running the ball at the weak side, and it's going to be a pretty good gain because you just don't have the numbers to stop it.
Yeah, and final thing on this as well, the Eagles do have the cornerback out there, Quinion Mitchell's out there, but he's sort of, they run like a slant, the Browns, and Quinion Mitchell was basically following the slant. He's not looking. Maybe he's meant to play the C gap, but if you're asking your outside cornerback who's lined up with a wide receiver to play the C gap, good luck, because he's going to be way more worried about the Browns passing the football. And Reed Blankenship does not take the best angle in the world, and he does end up getting sort of taken out by the receiver. But Reed Blankenship is also coming from a lot of depth, and to ask him to play the C gap from that far down is really difficult. If you're wondering where's Cooper DeJean is on the opposite side of the field. So there's just a massive gap. Like, maybe Quinion's meant to do better, but I think it basically, either way, I don't like it. If they're asking Quinion to, like, or Reed Blankenship to do it, I still don't like it. I'd still rather just see Joshua set the edge like a normal edge rusher would. And yeah, I don't really get that one at all. But anyway, I'm going to end with a positive next. So firstly, we get to your second point, Shane. So what do you want to talk about for your second thing on defense this week?
Okay, I want to talk about cover one. The Eagles ran a lot of cover one in this game. And so I'll run through several clips here. And again, I won't take a lot of time on them, but on this first one, this is just standard cover one, and there's not really anybody open. And so you can just watch it play out. Like, this is just standard cover one. You've got a linebacker in the hole over the middle. You've got a safety deep. And this is unfortunately the one where Quinion Mitchell should have had an interception, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson makes a great pass breakup there. But on this next play, this is a cover one blitz as well. Or excuse me. Yeah, this is cover one blitz, and it kind of looks like cover two to start. But he's going to end up being responsible for one of the safeties. And so, one of the receivers, and dives down, and you end up getting the sack on Deshaun Watson here. But they ran a lot of standard cover one. They ran a lot of cover one blitzes. On this is going to be another cover one blitz. And so you can roll it. Cover one blitz just basically means we've got the one safety deep, and our linebacker that would generally be over the middle blitzes instead. And that ball is going to get out over the middle. And that happens sometimes, but just another cover one rep. This rep, Toilet Paper on YouTube called this one out earlier, said that, it wasn't that one. Talking about shout out to Nolan Smith for taking away the throwing window on the DeJean blitz. This is the Cooper DeJean blitz again. I was going to talk about it now, so I didn't then, but they blitz Cooper DeJean off the edge, and they drop Nolan Smith into the throwing window for the slant coming behind him. And so you can see what he's talking about there, but this is cover one, except it's Nolan Smith who's dropping this time. and he drops right into that throwing window, and you end up getting the sack of Deshaun Watson. So another example of cover one. And the Eagles ran cover one. They don't normally run a lot of man coverage. Like, they ran man coverage on 15% of their snaps weeks 1 through 4. They ran it on 43% of their snaps this week. I had people ask me when I posted that, is this the new adjustment from Fangio? And I don't think it is. Like, I think you'll do it a little more, perhaps, now that you have Cooper DeJean in there. However, Cooper DeJean's not as good in man coverage as he is in zone. His hips are still a little stiff in man coverage, and there's some reps where he gets beat a little bit, and he's going to get beat worse against a Chris Godwin or a Mike Evans, or against a quarterback that's not one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, and Deshaun Watson. So I don't think you can be as like cover one man heavy as they were this week against especially certain matchups. But I do think it's a nice arrow to have in the quiver, and one I would like to see them shoot a little more frequently moving forward.
Yeah, I think it might be cool with the Deshaun Watson coverage, because that guy sucks, as we spoke about on the post-game show. Like, well and truly sucks. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, Shane, as well. Right, let's get to our final points. This was the first time, Shane, in a while I watched some of the Eagles passing concepts, and I thought, oh, it looks like a Vic Fangio defense. So I'm going to call my third point, like, let's just call it Fangio. Like, there was actually stuff, and everyone gets like so complicated about Vic Fangio and cover 6, cover 8, and this and that, and loads of comments you see online from very, very smart guys. I've always described Fangio in the most basically simple way: is half the reason why you play split safety is that you essentially, and this is so basic, but you get one extra defender on each half of the field. So Fangio's rules are he divides the field up in 2 basically, and he always wants to be +1 essentially. In pass coverage. So if you look at play 4 on my film thread, Shane, essentially, if you look at it pre-snap, if you divide the field in half, as Shane's doing lovely on the screen now, he always wants to be +1. So you end up with 4 over 3 one side and 3 over 2 the other side. This means you can only rush 4, which is why historically on third down he won't blitz as much. And then it's down to coaching, and it's easier said than done, but the coaching has to be really good at distributing these routes and knowing that, well, if he runs there, you take him, and he runs there, you take him. And it's really complicated to teach. It's not that easy just to say, oh, we got one more man, so it's easy. Cover one man's far easier to run. It's old school backyard football. There's your guy, go and cover him. The other thing I love about this, Shane, is they run a stunt with Jalen Carter up front, and Jalen Carter comes free immediately. So we talk about Fangio creating pressure without bringing numbers. This is basically perfect. Like, I watched this play and I couldn't explain how happy I was on the All 22, because this is what I thought we'd see. We've seen so much rubbish cover 3 on obvious passing downs. This is an obvious passing down. I believe it was third down. The Eagles just do what I expected Fangio to do. When Jonathan Gannon was the head coach, they ran this like every single third and long, and it basically always worked when they distributed the routes properly. So I really, really enjoyed this. What I also liked, and I'll throw out 1 or 2 very quickly, was I definitely saw more stunts this week. Whether it was just a bias from me because the stunts worked, and I think sometimes I'm guilty of that as well. I don't know if the numbers back me up, but I felt like the stunts worked more than they had before. I had to show this stunt, play 9 of my film thread, because Jalen Carter is not meant to be the guy going after the quarterback. He's meant to be like the setup guy and take out the guard. Which would allow, I think it's Zach Bourne on the blitz to come around him. And instead, Jalen Carter just blows up the play himself and gets a sack, which is just like my favorite play. Jalen Carter about 4 or 5 plays in this game that were awesome. But this is a really, really nice stunt as well. Bryce Huff gets some pressure using Jalen Carter and Ajomo, who was also excellent in this game, to try and take away the defender. And Zach Bourne does everything well. Play the run, blitz, and cover. So I thought there was like stuff that I expected to see. I thought we'd see more stunts from Fangio. I thought we'd see more split safety coverage. And ironically, you're right, they play a lot of cover 1 man. But you know what? I expected to see quite a bit of cover 1 man, because Fangio does play quite a bit of cover 1. There was just a lot of stuff that I liked this week. Now, it wasn't all good. There was one play that I won't get into now where like they didn't cover a deep over route from the slot, which we've seen has been a problem with his defense all year. And that was another cover 3 snap, by the way, where they couldn't cover it. So just like Kellen Moore, we're going to go back to my basic analysis, do the good stuff more. Like, look at the stuff that worked for Fangio this week. And I'm hoping that this is a sign that he's going to start to move away from cover 3. Hopefully we see some more cover 1, as well as some more split safety, cover 4, cover 6, cover 8, because that to me is what Fangio is all about. I feel like my overarching theme for this week from both offense and defense is if you look, there is enough good stuff to make you optimistic, but there's also some negatives that the Eagles need to iron out. But if they do sort of build on the good stuff, I think it was a pretty positive week overall. I'm summarizing like you haven't finished. So I will let you finish, Shane, with your final point this week on defense.
Yeah, I'm tempted to change our naming convention of podcasts, and instead of calling this one Eagles versus Browns All 22 Film Review, just naming it Do the Good Stuff, don't do the bad stuff.
Yep.
So, okay, well, I'm going to finish this off here. It feels very fitting that I started us with the first drive of the game, and I'm going to end us with the Eagles' last defensive plays on the field. And
I like that a lot.
I just think, like, first of all, it's nice symmetry, but also it's just really nice to have a clutch moment. And you could argue you shouldn't need a clutch moment at home against the Cleveland Browns coming off of a bye week, but how many times have we seen the Eagles defense let you down at the end of a game? And I mean, we got the Falcons game this year, the Seahawks game last year. Like there's been times when it's like, man, I just don't feel like the defense is going to clutch up and get a stop. And the Eagles are leading by a touchdown. You're in the fourth quarter. The Browns drive all the way down the field and they get a 1st and goal at the 8-yard line. And you are down Darius Slay at this point. He left the game with injury. You're also down Isaiah Rodgers, who was out of the game with injury at this point. He does come back in on 2nd down, but just the 3-play sequence is really good. On 1st down, the Browns come out in pistol, and you can watch Cooper DeJean. This is the play that Jonny was talking about earlier that I saved. I think this is man coverage. I saw some people saying Reed Blankenship gets fooled here by the play action. I think Reed Blankenship's in man coverage on the running back, and Cooper DeJean is responsible for and recognizes quickly that Elijah Moore is leaking out to the flat. And just watch him come across the screen here. And he goes out, he tracks the motion well, he avoids the pick, and he makes the tackle for a minimal gain. Like, there is not an iota of doubt in my mind that if Avonte Maddox is on the field instead of Cooper DeJean, this is a touchdown. Like, I have zero doubts. I've never been more confident in something in my life. And so it's a great play by Cooper DeJean. When I title plays, I put like D and then the number of whatever play I'm recording so I can keep them in order, and then a brief description so I can find them. And this one was, I named it DeJean Saves the Game. Well, the very next play I titled Smith Saves the Game. And it's the play you talked about earlier. They run a designed run for Deshaun Watson to the right, and he does such a good job. Like, he gets inside the tight end because of the motion, which the Browns are manipulating him. The tight end is supposed to block down, and he gets outside. And all of a sudden he's got to take on a pulling guard. And like you said, he peeks his head inside, because at this point you've got a guard and you've got a center, I think it is, on an edge rusher that's undersized and a defensive back. This should be a touchdown. This is a schematic win for the offense. And Nolan Smith, if he just hops outside, there's an angle to get this in for a touchdown. So he slow plays this, flashes his helmet inside, sheds outside, and makes the tackle. Hat tip to Isaiah Rodgers for laying a hit on Deshaun Watson too. That gets you to 3rd down. And on 3rd down, now, I don't love this play call, because on 3rd and goal from the 8-yard line, the Eagles are going to run a cover 1 blitz. And they run this cover 1 blitz, and their safety help is going to be on the 2 receiver side, which leaves you everybody on an island on the other side. I would rather see you like bailing somebody off the line underneath here. I don't think that extra rusher is really worth it in this point, especially out of empty. And if you watch the very middle, which I would argue you should be reading these dual slants inside out. And if Deshaun Watson does that, Cooper DeJean's beat for a touchdown. We talked about DeJean and man coverage. He's beat for a touchdown, but Watson doesn't look at it. He throws it to David Njoku, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson makes a play at the catch point and breaks that up. And so it was my 3 plays, my descriptions were DeJean saves the game, Smith saves the game, and CJGJ saves the game. And it was back-to-back-to-back plays. And there's just a lot of times that we've seen the Eagles fail in those situations. It was nice to see the defense clutch up for once.
Yeah, that was I must admit, I didn't see when I watched it back how bad DeJean got done on that play. So I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen, because if I didn't remember it, then I can't criticize it. I can't criticize him for it.
They just need to show DeJean the film of the 1st down play and say, this was good, do that more. and then they need to show them the third down play and be like, this wasn't good, do that less. And then
Yeah,
it
there we
just
go.
fits
We've
with the
nailed it.
overall flow.
We've nailed it. And toilet paper summed it up. It wasn't just CJ. It was also Deshaun Watson saved the game. Yeah. That man is bad at football. Right. I think we need to leave it there, Shane. That was a long one, but a good one. There was a lot of good stuff this week, as I mentioned a million times. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm so interested to see how the Eagles come out this Sunday, because if they don't build on the stuff I've seen this week and they go back to square one, I'm going to be very angry next week. But hopefully this is a sign where they might just be starting to figure some things out as a coaching staff. And
if that happens, you're going to be angry going into the Bengals game, which you're attending. So maybe you can yell at Sirianni from the sideline and he can hear you, and you can have a conversation with him. That'd be great.
Yeah, run pistol more. Yeah, that would go down well. I'll bring the banner outside, run from under center more. I'll bring the famous banner and just put under center and pistol. When it says run the ball, little star, run the ball, star, only from under center and pistol more.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. I will have my all 22 pass game review out probably in the next hour for the Patreon members. So you guys go check that out. To the over 1,000 of you that are watching live, please go check out the Eagles Pin Pull Network. We've got 8 full form shows on there a week, including live post-game shows right after the game. So you can check all of that out. Give us a follow on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. He is at Jonny Page. The network is at Eagles Pin Pull. And we will catch you guys next time for another episode.